The NFL Combine is over. And on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we're going to be talking through 3 must-make trades after the NFL Combine. I am your host, Shaun Moran, and I am joined by my co-hosts, good friends, and fellow knowers of ball, Keegan Thompson and Aidan Haller. Keegan, how you doing today, man? It's been a minute.
Yeah, I feel like it has been a minute since we all talked, sat down. Obviously, we have the group chat, but it has been a long time since we've sat together here, talked about some fantasy football. The Combine was great this year. Lots of fun risers. I didn't feel like there was a ton of fallers either. Obviously, there's the fallout of people not participating, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. But overall, things are good. We're close to free agency. I'm just desperately waiting to see how many players Joe Douglas does his due diligence on and ends up not signing. So I'm stoked. This is a fun time of year for sure.
Aidan, very pertinent time for you too. For the second year in a row, your team holds the number 1 pick in the draft. How you feeling after Caleb's big week? Everyone's talking about how great Caleb did without even throwing a pass.
Yeah, he had a good week. Was just out there, just smiling, answering questions. Seems like a pretty charismatic dude. Like, I don't know what to say. Pretty much all signs point towards Caleb Williams as Bears QB1, and it's exciting. I'm just praying they tag a wide receiver there at 9 and really get the juices flowing there at Soldier Field. We deserve some excitement. We deserve some happiness, and it feels like it's close. So I'm ready to roll.
Talking about a little double tap correlation at 1 to 9. You got a handcuff quarterback to wide receiver.
We're going to correlate a little bit. We're going to correlate a little bit.
The NFL Combine, it had some awesome performances, guys. Xavier Worthy, someone that I was a fan of tremendously. I think all 3 of us were. He breaks the 40-yard dash record. His fellow teammate, Aidan Mitchell, has a really strong combine and kind of sets a lot of hot takes off versus collegiate production versus NFL profile. LSU wide receiver Brian Thomas, who had the same 10-yard split at 6'3", 209 that Xavier Worthy had at 5'11", 168, which is pretty nuts. Him running a 4.33 40-yard dash. Blake Corum, Jalen Wright, Trey Benson, they emerge, I'd say, as the top 3 running backs in this class. And even though Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, Marvin Harrison, and Malik Neighbors ghosted the combine workouts, we still got Rome Odunze, who put on a bit of a show. Whether or not he's a cornball for staying and competing on the shuttle is your prerogative to debate, but
I kind of ate it up, honestly.
Odunze was great. I would love Odunze.
He was awesome.
On my Dynasty teams.
I need him at 9.
Yeah. But with this new information about prospects, we're starting to see some rookie hype really take off, looking at you, Aidan Mitchell. And when we couple that with rumors that Kirk Cousins looks destined to be a Falcon, that the Patriots are interested in Baker Mayfield, and there aren't a ton of suitors right now for Justin Fields. Interesting, this quarterback carousel. How do we play that for Dynasty? Then we bring in the news that Mike Evans is returning to the Bucs. Michael Pittman is getting tagged, and the Giants are probably going to let Saquon Barkley test free agency. We're starting to see a lot of Dynasty value move and some Dynasty value not move enough. So on today's episode, we wanted to give you, the Mean Team, actionable trade ideas that will allow you to take advantage of the intel coming out of Indy last week. But before we dive in, first off, thank you again for dropping all the comments that you've been dropping on our videos. I actually traded Christian McCaffrey this week. A lot of you guys gave me great ideas for trading McCaffrey on our last episode on 4 trades to blow up your Dynasty team with aging veterans. If you haven't had a chance to watch that video, go ahead. It's in our feed. If you have any comments below about guys you are trading, rookies you are high on, rookies you are low on, drop them in the comments. We love the feedback that we get from all of you. And second, if you are watching this video and you are not a part of the Regression to the Mean Team, go ahead, like this video, hit the subscribe button, and go ahead and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any of the content that we are dropping on this channel throughout the off season. All right, boys, we ready? We are going to start.
Unfortunate sneeze time right there.
Wow, that was great mute skills with the sneeze. I appreciate that. All right, Aidan, you're going to kick things off here. What is the trade that you feel like you have to make coming out of the NFL Combine?
Yeah, so this one goes back to what you talked about with all the wide receivers. I think going into the combine, we pretty much knew the top 3 guys. They're all going to go before pick 6, potentially pick 7, depending on where Brock Bowers goes, if it's a tight end premium, etc. But I think those next kind of range of wide receivers was a total crapshoot going into the combine, and we're starting to get a bit of clarity in terms of who do we think could potentially be a guy. And it's a pretty big list. I think that group as a whole tested quite well.
It's massive. It's a massive list,
which is exciting.
Massive list. Aidan, I want to give context to that. There are 15 potential wide receivers going in the first 2 rounds. I think Daniel Jeremiah, had 12 in his top 50. That's kind of where we're at with this wide receiver class. There's a plethora of guys that are highly touted right now.
It's pretty absurd. Like, beyond pick 108 going to the combine, you're like, I might be trying to move that. Pick 108 to 206 at this point, like, you're in business now. There's going to be a lot of guys there. So that's something I'm targeting here. So I'm flipping a wide receiver, young wide receiver, going to be 23 this upcoming year. First round draft capital that, for one reason or another, just hasn't worked out quite yet. Had some flashes in the postseason this last year, but I'm trying to get out from him. I think his value is far too high still in the Dynasty world, and that's Jameson Williams. Right now, you could get him for an early second. So just for the sake of pinpointing an actual pick, I'm trading Jameson Williams for the 202 in this year's upcoming draft. A lot of people might be fooled by kind of how he finished the year, had a couple big plays against the Niners. Even seemed like his route tree was starting to develop a bit, but the results just haven't been there given his first round draft capital and what we had all expected for him. In 21 games thus far, including the postseason, he's got 31 catches for 474 yards and 4 touchdowns, 5 carries for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's roughly 28 yards and 2 touches per game. For a guy that was supposed to be an absolute game changer, granted he was coming off the ACL out of college, we knew that. It's still far too little for a guy that was drafted in the first round with that type of speed. ARSB is very clearly the one in that passing attack. Sam Laporta, you've inserted yourself as number 2 in that passing attack. And at that point, that leaves Jameson Williams as pretty much a field stretcher. You've got Gibbs out of the backfield. You've got Monty at the goal line. I don't see a world where he ever carves out a significant fantasy role. And for that reason, I'm still shocked his dynasty value is as high as it is. I've been pretty down on him the whole time, to be honest. I think a lot of people were kind of starting to come around as, you could argue things are trending up for him, but like trending up from like damn near 0 is where we're coming from. So looking at what you could potentially get at that 202, I'm just going to replace him with another high upside wide receiver. As we mentioned, this group is deep. Looking at guys like A.D. Mitchell, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Troy Franklin, and even tossed in a bonus, maybe Blake Corum sitting there. You take the first running back off the board. I think I'm getting out from Jameson Williams. I want a high upside younger player. And for that reason, that's the deal I'm making. So it's Jameson Williams for the 202.
I'm a fan of that, and I'm a fan of both sides. Like, say you want to try and take advantage of wide receiver hype coming out of the combine, and you want to go pick up a distressed, underpriced asset like Jameson Williams. I like that. Bet big on talent. JMO, first-round talent, incredibly strong production at Alabama, field stretching speed, great offense. At the same time, though, this is an opportunity to sell high on Jameson Williams coming off the best and most impactful game of his career against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. I love that. Keegan, I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on combine hype with these wide receivers? Like, how are you playing that?
I mean, I think if you just look at it from this perspective where you're trading Jameson Williams, I do think there's some deserved hype on players that are around him. Like, I'm just looking at Keep Trade Cut, and Ladd McConkey is in this range of players like Aidan mentioned, Keon Coleman. Like, I think there is a reasonable belief to take a bet on one of these rookie wide receivers. And like, combine hype can be both good and bad, right? Like, we're in such a weird early phase where we don't know landing spots. Like, we don't know free agent stuff. It is a lot of hype. And I try not to put too much context from the combine specifically into that if I'm going to make this decision. I can go back though and watch Keon Coleman play, or I can watch Ladd McConkey play and look at their highlights or their tape. Like, I'm in on that. But I try not to lean too much on combine hype. Like, there are some freak stuff. Like, Brian Thomas Jr.'s weight adjusted 40 to me is like one of the biggest things that stands out. Or seeing Keon Coleman hit 20 miles per hour in the gauntlet, like those things stand out. I think as long as you take it with a grain of context and go a little bit farther than just the raw numbers that are posted, it's okay to have a little bit of hype buy-in from it.
Yeah, you even nailed it too, Aidan. Troy Franklin is someone who's getting slept on a little bit. His college numbers are absolutely bonkers. He has no combine hype right now because his height, weight adjusted 40 wasn't that impressive. People thought he'd run like a 4.3. He ran a 4.4. He's slight. He's kind of built like Devontae Smith. Probably profiles as a wide receiver too. But you're upgrading on a similar type player in terms of speed, field stretcher, but probably will go into an offense and be the 2 right away, where Williams is probably the second best option on his best day and probably the 4th best option in the passing game on most days with Jahmyr Gibbs. It's very interesting because it's kind of mystery boat-ish with Jameson Williams, right? He could be this, he could be that. Historical context says that this guy's going to bust. It just is.
And for Jameson too, like this is such a big year for his production, which is why like I don't hate either side of this, right? Because these rookies are a mystery box, and I'll talk about that a little bit more in my trade that I go over. But Jameson Williams has another year to prove himself, and Dan Campbell's already spoke about him in the offseason. It's very clear that he's part of their plans moving forward. You know, I'm sure they would love it to be Jameson rather than Josh Reynolds as like the next go-to guy, especially maybe if RSB gets banged up or Laporta has to miss a game. They really want to rely on Jameson Williams. So both sides here, you're taking a bet on kind of the unknown, which is what's so interesting about Jameson Williams. Even though he's been in the league now for a little bit, he still is a bit of a mystery box. Like you don't know what you're getting. So it's a very safe trade where you can bet on first round talent, or you can bet on the next incoming crop, maybe get slightly younger, which would be a little bit tricky. Jameson Williams is very young. It would be hard to get younger as a player from this pick, just with some of the people around him. But I think it's a great idea for both sides.
What receiver, Aidan, are you eyeing at the 202? Like, what's your favorite pick?
That's a hard one. I know a guy that we all like collectively as a group is Ladd. I think Ladd probably makes it there. Troy Franklin, it kind of feels like he's going to fall out of the first round. I had him pretty penciled into the first round, but like the only receivers that I'm very confident will be in the first round, like for sure, are obviously the top 3 that we're aware of. I think Xavier Worthy's absolutely in the first round now with his combine performance. Brian Thomas is absolutely in the first round as well. Those are the only 5 I can say with certainty. I think A.D. Mitchell is probably in there too. And then you put in a quarterback, maybe 2.
Penix.
You know,
Penix.
JJ or Penix falls in there. And yeah, like you're looking at Troy Franklin potentially falling out of there. So I would probably zero in on either Ladd or Troy Franklin. I think 2 very different skill sets, but guys that you said could easily slot in day 1 as the wide receiver 2 in their potential offenses.
I love it. I think I would side with trading Jameson Williams. I think getting off that and restarting the wide receiver clock makes a ton of sense. You're kind of capitalizing on wide receiver hype, the fact that this class is deep as hell.
Correct.
And you want opportunities. Keegan, on the other end, you're kind of seeing this a little bit differently, where though a lot of wide receivers are probably going to get taken in the top part of this draft, I think you're a little more skeptical that it's such high-end talent, and you're looking to try and maybe take advantage of that post-combine. So I'm curious to know what trade you have here.
Yeah, so in my mind, there's a very clear tier break, which we've talked about, like after the 107. Like once the 107 is done in your rookie drafts, like Rome will be gone, Brock Bowers will be gone, all the top quarterbacks will be gone, Neighbors, Harrison, like that first 7 picks, I think are very elite talents that I would not be trading out of. I would want them on my team. But right now, after that, the 108 to 112, I think is in a very unique sweet spot. Like I'm telling my fellow Dynasty players that your late first round picks are worth more right now than they likely will ever be in the next coming months, specifically for your 2024 picks. Free agency hasn't opened. We don't know draft landing spots, but the combine is wrapped up. And because of that, there's a ton of risers from the NFL combine that we've already discussed. And so I think right now is the perfect time to kind of capitalize on that buzz and move off of your The pick I'm going to be talking about specifically today is the 108 pick.
How'd you know I have the 108? I've got the 108 in the Dynasty League that we're in. You're speaking my language here.
Well, I hope this comes as a
These guys are in
service
negotiation too. There are active trade talks going on behind the scenes. So don't tip your hand, gentlemen. Play it cool here.
There are some players we've already mentioned that I think will go in this range. On the wide receiver, it's like Xavier Worthy could even be all the way up there, depending on how your league mates value. Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, Ladd could sneak in the first round. JJ McCarthy will be floating around there as well too. And the hype is real for some of these guys, like Xavier Worthy's record-breaking 40. I talked about Brian Thomas Jr.'s 40 time after being weight adjusted. Like, that's more impressive to me than what Xavier Worthy did. But because of this tier break,
the 10-yard split too, same 10-yard split. He had the same get off as a man that he's 5 inches taller than him and 40 pounds heavier than. That's insane for Brian Thomas.
It is absolutely insane. And this is like, it's such a good opportunity and time to do this because you don't want to wait until these picks don't mean the same thing, especially if you know landing spots. Like, if I look at Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr., Troy Franklin, and Ladd McConkey, all those players that could go in this range, there are some players, wide receivers, that are already in the NFL that are basically valued exactly at this 108 player. Specifically, 4 pass catchers I want to call out are DK Metcalf, Kyle Pitts, T. Higgins, and Zay Flowers is right around the value of a 108, according to Keep Trade Cut. If I saw those 4 names and I compared them to Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, Troy Franklin, and Ladd, you would hope that their best case scenario is they would become one of those pass catchers. You know, like, that would be such an accomplishment for any of them to become T. Higgins, DK Metcalf. And after Zay's amazing rookie year, I would put him in that spot as well too. So they're a bit of a mystery box. They're not as surefire. And there's no guarantee that any of these guys ever work their way up to a number 1 option. And right now, in that list of 4 players I have at value, Kyle Pitts is number 1 tight end. DK Metcalf is number 1 wide receiver for his team. T. Higgins is very much a wide receiver 2, but sometimes a 1B, depending on the game script and what's going on with the Bengals. And Zay Flowers has potentially emerged as the Ravens wide receiver 1, maybe not number 1 option after Mark Andrews, but you get the point I'm trying to make. You would pray that the ceiling for Xavier Worthy is as high as Zay Flowers, or as high as T. Higgins, or as high as DK Metcalf. So I think right now is the best time to capitalize on that combine buzz, on the rookie hype, and move off your 108. So you can move off 108 and get one of these players exactly at value, and I think it would be a super fair trade. And beyond that, there's a ton of other players that are right above it where you could add in a 3rd round or add in a 2nd round and really claim yourself like a good player from just moving off the 108.
Give me 2 second rounders for the 108. I'm like trying to make this happen because Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, they all seem like excellent players, but they all could bust for like, I want an opportunity to take multiple guys that are kind of similar. Like, if I could take Ladd and someone like Troy Franklin over just Brian Thomas Jr., I'm going to do that. I want multiple swings here. And I agree, the 108 now looks more attractive because of these freaky athletes at wide receiver. I think this is a great opportunity to sell the combine news.
And like, you don't just have to go these 1-for-1 trades, right? Like, I wanted to give people some options when I say, like, how can you get off the 108? And those are just 4 players that I picked out that are pass catchers that have that exact value according to Keep Trade Cut. And if you want to wiggle in another player or another late round pick, you're talking about Tank Dell, Michael Pittman, DJ Moore. I've seen some trades out there that was the 108 and like an early 3rd round for DJ Moore. Like, you're telling me I could just move off those picks and get DJ Moore or take a bet on Xavier Worthy? And it's nothing against those prospects, right? Like, I want my team to be younger, but I think the hype is so high right now for those players in that range. It's the perfect time to try and move off and get a very proven fantasy asset.
Dude, I think the market is undervaluing the impact that Kirk Cousins potentially could have on like a Kyle Pitts or like a Drake London. I know their values are still high, but what
I
Kirk
almost
Cousins
brought up Drake London again, but I've already added Drake London as a buy.
What Kirk Cousins has done for NFL wide receivers his entire career is understated. It's like very Matthew Stafford-ish. It's not like full-blown setting records like Stafford, but this man has supported multiple elite weapons, multiple seasons throughout his career. Man, that would be big time if Cousins was there. If you could trade the 108 for Pitts, Oh baby, I'm back in. You've talked to me full in. Keegan, let me get Pitts for the 108. We can make that trade happen right now.
I can't talk myself back into Pitts, but it feels like he's due for a big season next year. Like it's going to be a QB upgrade regardless of who steps in there. So no, I like that.
Especially
I like
if you play in a tight end premium league, like snagging Kyle Pitts. Like, just look at what TJ Hawkinson did last year,
hard,
dude.
That'd be what the tight end. Yeah, if you could swing a good tight end for the 108 and tight end premium, that'd be pretty lit.
Just for the record, I do have like tight end premium on when I'm looking at these, so that's already baked in from Keep Trade Cut. Okay, so
love that. Would you make that trade, Aidan? Would you try and take the 108 for more established vet or more picks, or would you rather just take the big swing on Brian Thomas or Xavier Worthy?
I think this comes down to, again, like, where are you at with your like rebuild and like point of contention? Like, just going back to a couple of our past videos, it's like, if you are right there on the cusp, I'm trading it for a guy like DK. I'm trading it for a guy like Kyle Pitts. You know, if you're closer to the beginning of your rebuild, like, I want the rookies. I want a guy like Brian Thomas. I want a young player that's going to help me build up and elevate the rest of my roster. So I think it really depends on, like, you need to know, or at least have like a good idea of like, where is my team? Like, be realistic with yourself. Be like, okay, like, am I one piece away? Am I like a bona fide, wide receiver 2 or, tight end, top 10 tight end away from winning a championship and winning some money? Go make that trade, Greg. You know what? Like, I didn't even make the playoffs last year. I guess if you're looking at the 108, you're like, okay, I barely made the playoffs last year. It's like, I don't know, like, I'm probably keeping this pick. It's like, maybe I've got some more second round picks. Like, we need some more youth on the roster. So you could
use that same point though, Aidan, and say like, oh, I almost made like a run of the ship. Like I got bounced first round or something. It's like, you are maybe just missing like one difference maker or something like that too. So it goes both ways.
I think too, my only pause with the 108 is if like the Vikings Godfather offer the Patriots and draft JJ McCarthy at 3, like he might jump into the top 7 in that instance then, and then the 108 gets more value. I know, like, I don't want to debate JJ, but like he would have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, that good offensive line, and Kevin O'Connell. It'd be really hard not to, and especially that draft capital behind him, it'd be really hard not to be at least excited about his dynasty prospects. And in 2 QB super flex type setting, it'd be malpractice to not take him if he's there at the 108, in my opinion. But that's very contingent on landing spot with that one. So if he's like a Bronco, I think I'm good. I think he can go sink or swim. I think I'm good passing on that.
Don't worry, dude. Jared Judy's on the trade block for the 3rd year in a row.
Dude. Day 1,000 on the trade block.
Yeah, death, taxes, and the Denver Broncos are exploring trade options for Jared Judy.
Speaking of the trade block, this last trade has not necessarily anything to do with what happened at the NFL Combine, but it more had to do with the rumor mill coming out of the NFL Combine. The NFL Combine, again, the whole entire NFL shows up. People are talking to each other. And it became pretty clear that the Falcons are smitten with Kirk Cousins. The Steelers are committing to Kenny Pickett. Now, that might be a trade tactic, right? Who knows? But it's kind of starting to feel like a fantasy superhero and favorite of mine is kind of on the outs and might potentially not have a starting gig next year at quarterback, and that's Justin Fields. So this one might bite me in the ass because Fields may land on the Patriots, and again, that's not great, but again, that'd be a starting job where he'd get a ton of rushing opportunity. He may land on the Steelers and it looks good, or Kurt goes back to Minnesota and he lands on the Falcons, right? There's a bunch of different options here, but as it currently stands, I don't think the market is correctly assessing that Justin Fields has pretty solid odds of not starting next year. And on Keep Trade Cut, he's sandwiched right between Tua and Jared Goff. Like, Jared Goff is behind Justin Fields right now in those dynasty rankings. And that's insane to me, considering that Jared Goff's about to get a multi-year extension with the Detroit Lions, and Justin Fields might be a bench player next year. Because if you look at the 9 teams that need a starting QB, you've got the Broncos, Vikings, Falcons, Buccaneers, Patriots, Raiders, Manders, Steelers, Bears. Those are the 9 teams. The Bears are most likely taking Caleb Williams. The Commanders are most likely taking Drake May or Jaden Daniels. The Broncos, they make a ton of sense on paper as maybe a Justin Fields team, but they're going to owe Russell Wilson $85 million in dead cap money to not play on their team over the next 2 years. So they might make sense to draft a rookie because it's going to be cheap and cost control. They might make sense to bring in like Sam Darnold or keep Jared Stidham, right? Who fucking knows what they're going to do? But they don't make a ton of sense to somebody to go trade for Justin Fields and then sign him to the fifth year option. Like that just seems like a team that's just going to blow it up. The Bucs are probably going to bring back Baker Mayfield. The Patriots probably draft a quarterback, but a maybe. There's been some smoke that they potentially trade back. The Raiders need a quarterback. Justin Fields could work, but then there's the whole Luke Getsy thing. Does Justin Fields want to play with the OC he had beef with in Chicago? The Steelers remain a good option. They do, but they like Kenny Pickett. Who knows if that's just an opportunity for them to try and drive the price lower for Fields at TBD. And the Vikings could be a great option if Kirk bails, but are the Bears really going to trade Justin Fields in division and let him play them twice a year? Like regardless, Justin Fields is option 3 for a lot of teams. I think option A is drafting a quarterback and resetting the quarterback, contract clock. Option B, Godfather offer for Kirk Cousins, or, a pretty solid offer for Baker Mayfield. Option C, Justin Fields. Option D is like the Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold vet minimum type contract situation. Maybe you pair him with a Bo Nix, Michael Penix, right? Like that whole path you want to go down. Maybe like a Ryan Tannehill in that situation too. Like whoever is trading for Fields has to give up draft capital and then probably agree to the 5th year option, right? I'm assuming. So you're going to probably do 2 years of Fields. And regardless of what we think about as Justin Fields as a fantasy superstar, because he is when he plays and he's healthy, the NFL doesn't really seem to be telling us that they're super excited about Justin Fields to be their franchise quarterback. And I love him. If he is a starter next year, and you trade him for Derek Carr in a 2025 first, I may or may not have that offer in my inbox right now. It's going to look really dumb. But if he's a bench player next year, and he starts the first 6 weeks riding the pine, it's going to look pretty solid, right? You're going to have a 2025 first and then a guy who's, we know, literally like has to play for the Saints because of their contract situation with Carr and how they've rolled things in the future. And you go look at Keep Trade Cut or other dynasty sites, players that are currently undervalued compared to Fields in a 2 QB super flex setting. Michael Pittman, who I've talked about, who I love. Terry McLaurin, who's finally going to have a quarterback, someone I love. Steph Diggs, Devontae Adams. All 4 of these guys are gettable with Justin Fields. And then you could also pair that with another quarterback or late first, right? Like, I know this sounds crazy, but you could go get the 112 or the 2-1, and you could pair that with Will Levis or Matthew Stafford, or you could take those combos of quarterbacks like Will Levis and like Terry McLaurin for Justin Fields. Like I'm thinking, how can I get a quarterback that we know is going to play in 2024 that might not play in 2025, who we can then trade later down the road, with a good wide receiver that we can help win leagues with or win games with in 2024. So like, I think the Titans give Will Levis the Sam Howell treatment. They put him behind a battle line. They just say, hey, dude, go out there, make shit happen for 16, 17 weeks. If it doesn't work, we're just going to take the best quarterback in the next draft. I think he might have some success with Brian Callahan as his OC. He did pretty well in Kentucky under that McVay offense as a junior. Ask Keegan. He was a big Levis guy coming out. And then Matthew Stafford's aging, right? But he was awesome. He's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL last year. And we talked about this all the time. He's a major touchdown regression candidate. So like it breaks my heart selling low on Fields because you are. And he could get traded to the Steelers and like you look like an idiot. But there's an opportunity here where like he's backing up Anthony Richardson in Indianapolis or something. Like something random. I've heard that floated out there because he's a running quarterback. Richardson's always hurt. Like I've heard this floated out there. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like I'd rather go get a proven older wide receiver, pair him with maybe a worse quarterback, but one we know is going to play in 2024, an older quarterback. And I would just kind of wash my hands with it. It's not looking great for Justin. And I thought he'd have a bigger market at this point, but he doesn't.
Here's a trade you can make that's about even value on Keep Trade Cut. Talking about like adding a younger piece, getting rid of Fields and moving on to a quarterback that's kind of like your bridge dynasty quarterback. You could trade Justin Fields and get Aaron Rodgers and pick 112, like first round 12. And you could just spend a year with Rodgers, pray that he stays healthy. He will throw like 25 to 30 touchdowns this year in that offense. And like, then you also get 112, which could be Brian Thomas. It could be Ladd, like there's definitely easy ways to navigate this and still get some value back on Fields. But it's tough. I feel like if you are going to sell him, you have to do it before you even know where he goes, kind of thing, which is scary. It's
Scary.
like scary waters to navigate for sure, but you don't want to get you don't want to get caught holding Bitcoin when it goes down.
Yeah. When it goes to zero. You don't want to get caught when
it's a
Sam
shame the
Bankman
NFL doesn't value fantasy
would be
points for
taking
drop
the hat
back
off.
the same
Yes,
way that
your
we
hat
do.
would
Like
be
if
off.
only they
It's
cared
like
about that
buying
stat,
shit.
like Justin Fields would be getting a massive contract.
You'd be fucked. You don't want to be caught holding the bag. Okay. We have talked about Justin Fields for 5 minutes.
I feel like
and
I'm not
resident
hearing a
Justin
ton
Fields
about
expert
it. And obviously, we're not like part of the
is on
rumor
the,
mill. We're
is on
not
the
getting
horn with this.
insider
Aidan,
news. But like,
what do we do with
Vegas
Justin?
gets
Is
brought
Justin
up
gonna
and like
start
quickly
next
gets shut
year? What are
down.
we
I feel like
doing?
Vegas is a good spot. For
I
him
don't
to
know
go.
if Kirk
Like-
goes to Atlanta and Russ goes to Pittsburgh.
Even
like,
if you brought him
it
in,
gets dark really fast, gentlemen, and it feels like we are on that path.
but if you want to,
Kirk Cousins,
why not
is,
bring
he's
in
pretty much
Justin
gonna take-
Fields?
I think
Like,
whoever
because it's not
pays
like you're
him
paying a
more
ton for
out of
Aiden
the
O'Connell,
two.
right? Like the quarterback.
I don't
room
think
is
the
not
Vikings
costing
want
a
to
ton
pay
of
him
money.
that
Like,
type
why
of
not
guaranteed
bring
deal
in
again.
Justin? And if you
I
really
think
like
the
Aiden
Falcons
O'Connell,
are
you
more
give him a
than
chance to win the
willing.
camp battle. I don't
Desmond
think
Ritter
he would beat
was
out
a
Justin Fields
disaster last
in
year.
a camp battle. But I
They
feel
were
like that offense
just been openly saying
makes
like,
sense.
if they had
I feel like
better
that's a
QB
good
play, like,
fit for him.
things would be much different last year. It's like they're not even.
He's their
sugarcoating
scapegoat.
it.
He
Like,
was the scapegoat on
yeah.
that season. He was like, "Fuck you, Arthur. Fuck you, Desmond Ritter." That was the scapegoat.
Yeah,
and
no,
I approve
yes.
this message. I approve this.
Yeah,
message.
so things get dark in a hurry. Like I don't think Denver would be in the market for Justin Fields. I know a team.
I think a
that
week
you
ago
didn't
you said
mention
he was going to be a
only other
starter.
location I could think of would be quite funny actually. Is it would be the team that we traded up to get would be the New York Giants. They are pretty openly done with Daniel Jones. That would be an interesting one, but
It was that
that could be
Florio
a JJ
report,
McCarthy
man.
location
Florio was
at,
basically like Kirk
what
Cousins
are they
is
sitting at
looking at
6, right?
homes in
The New
Atlanta.
York Giants.
Are they
He's
going to
gonna
take?
move
I
his
thought they were
family.
going with Danny
They
for
lit
one
the
more
internet
year.
on
Are they going to
fire.
take a quarterback?
I don't know, but they're pretty done with Daniel Jones. But to your point, we're in dangerous waters here because we have no idea how this is going to shake out. It's either when he plays, it's like fantasy points per game. He's a top 5, top 10 QB in fantasy football. But if he's riding the pine, this is
A nightmare.
This is a huge problem. A huge
Nightmare.
problem. You probably drafted him like if you did a startup last year.
Guilty. Guilty.
This was maybe your first pick. Like this was
I
like
don't
your
care
first
how
pick to
many
start. You're like,
times
here
the
we
trade
go.
calculator
109,
finds Justin
109,
Fields on
baby,
our
I
card
got
in
him.
2025 first
On an
makes
MVP
sense for
breakout
Fields.
year, and now
I
you're
just
potentially
couldn't
looking
do
at a backup.
I-
365 years, 365 days later.
It's fucked up,
It's-
man. The NFL
I don't know.
The
The
NFL
NFL's
doesn't
fucked up.
value fantasy points per drop back the same way that we do. Like if only
I
they
don't
cared
know.
about that stat, like Justin Fields would be getting a massive contract.
There has to be
Whatever.
a suitor that like we don't know about yet. That could come in.
I feel like I'm not hearing.
I
I
was
was
gonna
going to say before we get out of here, like I know one thing that people are probably exploring in Dynasty is like the first 5 picks. I think they can go any way,
They
shape,
make
or
a
form.
ton of
Obviously,
sense.
everybody has a
They
need.
make a
Like,
ton
is
of
there
sense.
any spot
If
in
they
that
don't-
even
range
they
they
can
can go
trade
get-
out of
yeah,
to try
like
and move back
Jaden
from,
Daniels,
or trade up?
You
from as
cannot
well, too.
roll out that team with Aiden O'Connell.
And like
You
the one
cannot
picks
do
1
it.
through 5,
Like,
or
you
1
have
through
to
6.
upgrade.
Like, is there why any not type of bring movement in that you Justin guys would make Fields? right Like, now 'cause in it's not like Dynasty you're paying a ton for Aiden O'Connell, post right? Like, the combine, quarterback pre-draft? room's not Is there costing any a of those ton of picks that money. you'd be Like, why willing not
to
bring
shave
in
off?
Justin? And if you really like Aiden O'Connell, you give him a chance to win the camp battle. I don't think he would beat out Justin Fields in a camp battle, but I feel like
That would
offense
be, dude. That would be
makes
so
sense.
sad.
They want to
I feel
run
like
the
that's a
ball.
good fit for him.
They want to run the ball too. And again, if he got traded to the Raiders after you trade him, it would be a bummer because I think they would run the ball a ton with him. But
Yes.
fuck, man. Oh,
It's a
dude.
bad like a month ago. I was like, he's gonna start. We're good. They might even
I
get a
think
first
week ago
rounder.
You said he was going to be a
I
starter.
thought he was. I thought
You can
he
have
was
my
gonna start for the
102.
Falcons
There was
last
rumors
week.
swirling. Yeah, there was rumors that they were like they might get a first for him, and it's like we're looking at like a
Offline,
third rounder
offline.
plus like a fifth. Like it's. I just want it to end.
It was that
Just-
Florio
it just-
report, man. Florio was basically like Kirk Cousins is looking at homes in Atlanta. He's going to move his family. And it lit the internet.
And if you
on
have
fire.
any,
I don't know.
I desperately
trades
need
that
him to
you're
resign.
considering, trades that
If
you're
Kirk
making,
Cousins
also
resigns, it's
drop
almost like a
those in the
guarantee that
comment.
Justin
It would be
Fields
great
goes
to
to
start
an
building
NFL.
up some
If
some
Kirk Cousins
commenter,
signs with the Falcons
trades
and you
that
have
we
an
can
offer
go
out there to
over
trade
and
Justin
review.
Fields,
So
I
to
would
our
do it in a
listeners,
second. Like in a
let us
second.
know what you got going.
Like,
Let
do
us
it.
know the picks that you're thinking.
Honestly,
about
I'm
moving. Let us
probably
know the
going to end up
players that
drinking
you
that
want to
trade.
move
I'm going to
off
trade
of, or if
Derek
there's a
Carr
player
for Derek
interested in
Carr in
acquiring,
2025
let us
first.
know.
It's
We'll
going
talk
to
about
kill
how
my
we can get you.
soul, but I think I'm going
That
to do it.
is.
I think I'm going to do it.
You got Stones.
A
But
2025
you are wearing
first.
that. Yeah,
A
you are wearing the
2025
hat, man.
first. I gotta grab that. I don't know, man.
I don't care how many times a trade calculator for Dynasty would tell me that Derek Carr in a 2025 first makes sense for Fields.
I won't do it.
I hate
No, I won't do it.
having Derek Carr on my team is going to make me not like this team as much, but having the 2025 first would make me happier.
Funny enough, I actually have a dynasty team with Justin Fields and Derek Carr as my 2 QBs. So it's even worse. So it's a disaster.
All right, fellas. This was a great time. Great time talking ball. If anyone is still listening, if you've traded Justin Fields recently, drop it in the comments. We'd love to see your thoughts on that. Like, seriously.
And if you have any other trades that you're considering, trades that you're making, also drop those in the comments. It would be great to start building up some commenter trades that we can go over and review. So to our listeners, let us know what you got going. Let us know the picks that you're thinking about moving. Let us know the players that you want to move off of, or if there's a player interested in acquiring, let us know, and we'll talk about how we can get you there.
All right, fellas. Thank you again for hopping on. It's always a pleasure talking ball. Until next time.